Just for the audience, I'm calling him Kevin, and we became fast friends last night. Before I begin...
We're very formal people down under.
Kevin has an amazing history in public service. He, as you just heard in the intro, he served as the Prime Minister of Australia, but has continued his public service. He actually served as Prime Minister twice, and has continued his public service as being the ambassador to the United States. So why are you going backwards in your career, Kevin?
I have a natural predisposition towards permanent demotion because there's less responsibility over time. No, I started off as a career foreign service guy back in the Mesolithic period, and I'm a China specialist. So spent a fair bit of time working in around China, but then I lurched down the food chain of life into politics. But you've worked in politics too.
I have been sliding backwards myself too.
Okay,
so.
Good.
All right, so we don't have much time as this whole block is a little truncated to make sure you all be able to have lunch today. So my first question, Kevin.
Are we standing between them and lunch?
Yeah, they have lunch. You don't get lunch.
All right, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
So short, sharp, and funny? Is that what we're going to do?
It's fair to say that the United States has seen a good deal of political inconsistency over the last decade or so. Our current administration has taken a radically different tact and path to dealing with our allies. As a key ally, Australia, and a fellow G7 nation, how has Australia and other nations changed their approach and their expectations of the United States?
Well, those of us who have this long, deep, and broad relationship with America, we are quite philosophical about changes in the body politic in the United States. This alliance of ours alone between Australia and the United States, we're your oldest Indo-Pacific ally, and together with the British, your oldest continuing allies in the world. So for us, we've navigated this relationship with America over 15 different presidents, Republican, Democrat, 15 Australian prime ministers, Labor Party, Conservative Party, including under me. And what I've noticed in this long span of history is that the alliance goes from strength to strength because it's anchored in common interests and common values. And frankly, a whole wellspring of, shall I say, popular support for the relationship between the two countries. On top of that, I think the institutions of our relationship are strong. We have a security treaty, ANZUS, signed in '51. We have a Five Eyes intelligence relationship whereby we share each other's most sensitive intelligence material. That goes back to 1948. We have now the AUKUS agreement between Australia, United Kingdom, and the United States on sharing advanced submarine technology and advanced defense technologies across the board without regulatory barriers. We are members of the Quad with Japan, the United States, Australia, and India. And despite some recent bumps in the road, we have a free trade agreement with the United States, which is now more than 20 years old. So the institutions of our relationship are good. Sure, President Trump's administration has different priorities, but I printed the embassy mugs. On the outside of it says, "Keep calm, we're Australian." So, we'll work our way through all of these little challenges on the way through.
What about the Australian people? Are they looking at the United States or thinking about the United States differently than they did, 10 years ago?
No, the Australian people have seen the first Trump administration. They've seen the return of the election of President Biden. They've seen the return of President Trump. I think the view down under is this is a very big country. It has as dynamic a democracy as ours, and we have a pretty robust democracy ourselves. It's take no prisoners, slug and punch sort of stuff. We're not a bunch of innately, what's the word I'm looking for, conciliatory Europeans who have a committee to solve most problems. We're sort of more into the biff. So when we see this happening here, we go, well, that's interesting. But we see a lot of resonances with the way in which we conduct our politics down under. So what Australians see is a very big country. We see it as the most powerful military still in the world, the product of a very long engagement militarily with us, whereby we have been in the trenches with you guys in every major war for 100 years. The crazy guy in the foxhole next to you is more likely to be an Australian or a Brit. That's just the way in which it's been. It's a big economy. It's a dynamic economy. Look at what's coming out of Silicon Valley, what's coming out of the technology precincts right across the United States. These are economy-changing, nation-changing, military-changing technological advances. So our view of all that is that that's where the mainstream of our collaboration with the United States will continue to go. And we'll navigate political bumps in the road and policy bumps in the road on the way through. So that's the broad view down under. We don't intend to be distracted by what we would see as policy marginalia.
And obviously in the United States, you know, we're seeing a high level of polarization. You know, more and more people have kind of left the center, the political center. Is that a similar dynamic that we're seeing in Australia?
Around the world, you see this question of political polarization, social polarization, economic polarization proceeding in tandem. But some of the responses have been different. Look at elsewhere across the Anglosphere in the last short period of time. The Brits have elected an essentially centrist government under Keir Starmer. The Canadians next door have done the same under Prime Minister Mark Carney.
And your party just got re-elected?
So the Australian Labor Party has just been elected back home, which is essentially a centrist party, each of them with actually very large majorities. So there are different responses in different parts of the world to how you deal with, let's call it the polarization phenomenon. If you go to Europe, then folks are more concerned about the rise of Alternative for Deutschland, more concerned about the rise of Le Front, or whatever Marine Le Pen's party is called these days, and parallel phenomena.
Well, she has to get out of jail first, doesn't she?
There's a few problems under French law.
Yeah.
And so there are different political responses. There's underlying, however, this sense of and reality of social disruption, which we in the global political center need to be deeply attentive to within our democracies to make sure of one thing. Everyone has a rolling physical and emotional stake in the continuation of the democratic contract between government and the governed. Otherwise, people peel off and they look for alternatives.
Let's talk about China. You're an internationally recognized expert on China. I'm the proud recipient of 2 books penned by you. So
I signed them up to you.
Well, thank you. Well, now I can't resell them. So,
Sandy,
okay,
yes,
fine.
right. You put them on eBay, you'll get a lower price with my signature.
Kidding, of course. All right. So, how would you assess how the Western world, basically the G7 nations, are doing in either, you know, challenging or collaborating with China on, you know, geosecurity issues, on economic issues? I mean, China is now kind of neither friend nor foe to countries like yours and ours. Give us the 101 on, you know, what China's strategy is and how the Western world should be thinking about China.
Yeah, I first began studying China seriously nearly 50 years ago as a kid at university. So I've seen things change a lot. And when I was a junior diplomat and was in Beijing as we led up towards Tiananmen in 1989, and I was in the square not long before. So I've seen China over a long period of time. And now under Xi Jinping, which is the book that I've just written and which we talked about before. If you stand back from all the daily slugfest of retail politics in all of our democracies, what are the big megatrends which are catapulting towards us? One is this profound geopolitical and geoeconomic phenomenon with the rise of China and the extent to which it succeeds in its aspirations to become the world's largest military and the world's largest economy, and in both categories, the strategic competitor is the United States, which is our long-standing ally. That's a big one. It's huge and it's unfolding. Second one is what happens with the unfolding technology revolution, where we do not know yet who will win the ultimate competitive race on artificial intelligence between China and the United States, between the United States and its democratic allies, or in the authoritarian world. And thirdly, the never-to-be-silenced challenge of climate change, which is the silent revolution, if you like, which is unfolding across the planet. So if you look at these three big ones, China is a common denominator of all three, which is why it is the macro challenge. So our response to it in the policy world is along these lines. We know where Xi Jinping wishes to take the country. It's quite clear. It's hiding in plain sight. He's been absolutely clear that he wishes to become the largest economy, the largest military, that he wants to take Taiwan, that he wants to displace the United States. You don't have to make that stuff up. It's there in the internal literature of the Chinese Communist Party. So the question is, how do you navigate that? I think there are two arms to it. One, as administrations since 1949 have viewed it, and as your allies have viewed it, to continue to deter, through deterrence, the Chinese from using unilateral military force to change the map in the Indo-Pacific, of which Taiwan is the central piece. That is an ongoing challenge for your military, for the Taiwanese, for your allies in Japan and in Australia. But I'm here to report that since 1949, we've all succeeded. It's been contained. It's actually a successful exercise in integrated deterrence. So the first pillar of preserving the strategic status quo in this vast region called the Indo-Pacific, which will increasingly generate the bulk of global growth and activity for the 21st century. To preserve that stability, deterrence is the core. It's military, it's technological, and it's alliance-based. The second pillar is this: deterrence, if it is assumed, to have between the governments of the United States and China an agreed framework for managing this highly competitive relationship. To be able to navigate what I call the relationship of managed strategic competition. There's one thing worse than managed strategic competition, it's unmanaged strategic competition. A bit like the problem with, the one thing in the world worse than organised crime is disorganised crime. You know, it's, that was a joke, it was not a serious point. But,
well, from a country founded by criminals,
that's
so
true.
That's right.
We're proud of that. Mind you, had you guys lost the Revolutionary War, then there never would have been a criminal colony in Australia. And my forebears, who are all criminals, would have ended up in Savannah, Georgia. And I could have become the governor of Georgia. So. Where were we?
You're talking about China and their
managed strategic competition.
Yeah,
so
the two arms.
Deterrence, first arm. Second arm, managed strategic competition. And I try to conceive it in these terms, defining between the two sides their absolutely core national security interests, around which there are red lines, and to have a mechanism to navigate and negotiate those on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, so they don't become kinetic by accident. They don't actually turn into crisis, conflict, and war by accident. The second is, in all those other domains, across trade, across investment, across technology, across capital flows, across currency markets, across ideology and ideation and the world of ideas, there should be no holds-barred, non-kinetic competition between these two worldviews and these two entities. And may the best system win. I happen to be backing Team Freedom, but I'm a bit old-fashioned. And I think we've got a pretty good chance of prevailing. And then the third element of managed strategic competition is to preserve enough political capital for the two parties to collaborate where global public goods are at stake, like combined action on climate, combined action on preventing the next pandemic, like we monstrously collectively failed with the last one, and these big global challenges which can emerge, which none of our political systems can separately or independently, even the Chinese and the Americans, handle by themselves. So my framework is along those, think of it as a two-piston engine, boom, 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 boom. You've got these two things going, deterrence, manage strategic competition, and a political mechanism to arbitrate both of them. I think that's the way through. And so far, we've kind of done that, so far.
So let's bring this back to the United States and Australia. As we've already referred to, we are two countries founded in the same spirit. We have some real cultural commonalities, and there's particularly, being an automotive community, there's a lot of people here who still remember, Holden. A lot of our General Motors friends and Ford friends, had assignments in Australia. Was always their favorite assignment. I'm thinking about our friend Mark Royce, who still raves about his time leading GM.
Knew him well when he was down under.
Yeah, Australia. So what about our two nations? What more can or should we be doing together? Or do you see an opportunity for us to further expand our relationship? You mentioned climate change, but there's also, rare earth materials. There's, opportunities to expand trade. Your thoughts on that?
I think there's about 3 or 4 areas which immediately come to mind. You started with Detroit, obviously, and the automotive industry. Australians, as you know, have 2 deep religions. One is Ford and one is GM. You either drive a Ford or you drive General Motors Holden.
There's a great documentary called Holden versus Ford. Look it up.
It's kind of fun because it's anchored here and in this part of the world. And so it's so good, by the way, for those of us who are Australians to see the complete rebirth of Detroit. Because we know, as Australians, that Detroit went through some pretty bad times. The turnaround of Detroit is a remarkable global story. And full marks to you, my friend, and the institution you lead for being part of that, together with civic governors and civic leaders and state leaders here in Michigan. So looking forward, in automotive, for example, take that sector alone. We have inbound investment from a large Australian company called Fortescue Energy, $250 million into batteries, which are used, obviously, in the car industry here in Detroit. We also, more broadly than that, if you look at collaboration on motor vehicles itself, Ford's design shop in Melbourne, which employs thousands of people, designs, frankly, the engines for what's called the Ford Ranger. Mm-hmm. It's the largest selling car in Australia, by the way. I drive one down under. And it's designed down there and it's built here. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of good. So there's elements of the collaboration in automotive which I think can go from strength to strength. The second you've touched on, which is critical minerals, rare earths, both mining them and processing them and stockpiling them. Geopolitically, China is seeking to dominate this industry across the 50 categories of critical minerals designated by the United States government, and we've already seen threats, some of them actualized, in blocking supply to the US and other US allies, including our friends in Japan. So, the President of the United States has said this is a strategic priority. We agree with him. The geology of the United States does not permit you to be self-reliant in all 50. Because they're not all here. But if you add Canada and Australia, you are. So what we need to work out, and we have a draft accord with the administration at present on these questions, is how do we collaborate both on the mining, the extraction, the transportation, and the processing, and the stockpiling to make our economies resilient, including what you'll need for future battery manufacture for the future. Third pillar, which comes to mind, is purely in investment terms. Australia's pension funds are among the biggest in the world because we have this policy down under we've had for 35 years. We require every Australian citizen to save 12% of their income. The cumulative effect of that is that for 27 million people in Australia, we now have funds under management of just on $3 trillion US. Put that in context, that's larger than the sovereign funds of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar combined. So, why do I mention that? Is that our funds cannot invest all those funds within Australia. The economy is not big enough. So increasingly they're diversifying offshore, increasingly they're coming here, and they're investing in big, long-scale, long-term infrastructure projects in various states in the United States. And that's where that can happen here in Michigan as well. I see it happening in a number of states already in the south and the southeast of the US. Why not here? And certainly I've been talking to the governor about this as well. So if I want 3 strong pillars, automotive, look to the future in terms of critical minerals needs for, frankly, the critical technologies of the future, plus as a very large-scale global source of investment capital.
Perfect. I could go on, but unfortunately we are out of time. His Excellency, the Honorable Kevin Rudd, the Australian Ambassador to the United States and former Prime Minister. Kevin, thank you so much.